Hello and welcome to today's lesson where we're looking at how to run an effective meeting. We've all experienced a bad meeting, one where people arrive after the official start time and the meeting starts 10 minutes later than planned. There's no clear agenda, so the meeting meanders and wanders around various topics, and the person with the authority to make a decision isn't present. At the end of the meeting, it's overrun by 10 minutes and nothing has been decided. Perhaps the only thing you have agreed is to hold another meeting. So clearly, nobody is being guided by a set of effective meeting guidelines. It's easy to see why this occurs. When we first begin our careers, we're invited to attend meetings. Now, typically these meetings will be of the unstructured variety, such as those I've just described, and we begin to think that this is simply how meetings are done. But it doesn't have to be this way. There are, fortunately, some effective meeting guidelines you can follow to ensure that your meetings are both productive and run like clockwork. A good way to think about these steps is in terms of what you need to do before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting ends. So let's look at before the meeting. In order to set up your meeting for success, you need to decide if you even need to have a meeting, start with the end in mind, determine your agenda, determine the attendees, and optionally, number 5, garner support. So let's look at each of these in a little bit more detail. Do you even need a meeting? Now, unnecessary meetings lead to frustration and waste time. So before you jump in and schedule your meeting, think if another means of communication might be more appropriate. So perhaps a simple email sent to 3 or 4 of the right people could achieve the same objective. Number 2, start with the end in mind. Now, when you first think of calling a meeting, it's a good idea to start by thinking about the specific purpose of the meeting. Meetings can happen for all kinds of purposes. Maybe you need to reach a decision, maybe you want to generate ideas, maybe you need to create a plan, maybe you need something approved, or maybe you just want to create enthusiasm around a specific idea. Whatever it is, a good place to start is by using the phrase, at the end of this meeting, we want to have, and then saying exactly what outcome you want at the end of the meeting. And that's going to help you work out the next steps. So that moves us on to number 3, to determine the agenda. Now, without a clear agenda, it's much more likely your meeting won't be a success. In simple terms, all your agenda needs to do is list the topics to be discussed, the time allocated to each topic, and who's going to lead each topic item. Now, finally, make sure you distribute your agenda to the attendees at least 24 hours before the start of the meeting, and that will give everyone a little bit of time to prepare. If it's a regular meeting, such as a weekly team meeting, then create, a standard agenda template that will be used each week. Number 4, determine the attendees. You're going to need the right people in the room. Now, it might sound really obvious, but if you're calling a meeting to make a decision, then the meeting will be pointless unless the key decision maker is present. But don't go too far. To have an effective meeting, you should have everyone who needs to be present, but not a single extra person. Once you have put together your list of attendees, review it to see if anyone can be removed. Now, one thing to watch out for is email invites spreading. With the advent of technology, obviously meeting invites are often sent by email. So one problem this creates is that invites are forwarded by attendees to other people they think might be interested in attending. So what started out as a really focused meeting with just 6 attendees could soon become a 20-person meeting where it's going to be really difficult to get anything decided. So to avoid this, check if extra people beyond your original list have been invited to attend. Now, if you find that additional people have been added, then follow up with them and find out what they're going to contribute to the meeting that the original attendee could not. Number 5, and this one is optional, garner support. And it's a final step to perform before your meeting, and it's applicable if the purpose of your meeting is to get support for an idea or a plan of action that you are proposing. In this scenario, it's worth remembering that anything can happen in a meeting situation, when people are presented with something for the first time. So to maximize the chances of getting what you want, getting your idea approved, getting your proposal approved, it can be a really good idea to speak with each of the attendees individually before the meeting. This allows you a way to check that their win conditions are being met, which is basically a way of saying that they're happy with what you're going to be presenting. And also, if it isn't, it gives you an opportunity to recalibrate your proposal so you can actually meet their win conditions. So those were the steps before we hold the meeting. Now we're ready to look at the steps we do during a meeting so that we keep our momentum by running the meeting efficiently. And to do that, we make sure we start on time, finish on time, take charge of time, ban technology, avoid groupthink, park irrelevant issues, take notes, and confirm next steps. Let's look at each of those in turn. So people feel appreciated when you treat them and their time as valuable. So make a point of starting and finishing on time. Through this really simple act, you're going to building a reputation for starting and finishing on time. You'll be amazed at the goodwill you'll create amongst your peers and the effort people will make, not only to attend your meetings, but to turn up on time. Number 2, stick to your timings. Before the meeting, you already created an agenda, laying out how much time was devoted to each topic. So now it's time to stick to it. It can be a really good idea to put the agenda up on a screen or on a whiteboard so everyone can see it. If there's a lot of people present in the meeting, then it can be difficult to focus on what's being said as well as manage the time. So maybe consider asking a colleague to help you keep time. Number 3, ban technology. Really simply, it's not going to be an effective meeting if people are using their laptops or their phones during the meeting. And number 4, avoid groupthink. Now, groupthink occurs when everyone gets behind a consensus view, and it's basically the enemy of creativity and imaginative idea generation. A really simple technique to avoid this is to ask senior members of staff to contribute to the discussion last, and the more introverted team members to contribute first. Number 5, park issues as necessary. A useful tool to prevent getting sidetracked by interesting ideas that pop up during the meeting is to use the parking technique. So it works like this. When an interesting discussion topic is raised that doesn't really relate to the agenda, then use the following steps. Thank the person for raising the point. Tell them that unfortunately the point they've raised is a little bit outside the scope of this meeting. Tell them that you'll make reference to the point they've raised in the meeting minutes. Tell them that we or they can then choose whether or not to organise a follow-up to discuss this point. Now, using this technique acknowledges and respects people's contribution to the meeting, but it also ensures you stay on track, discussing only the topics that are on the agenda. And finally, number 6, take notes. It is amazing how many meetings happen without anyone taking notes. The reason to take notes is to record any questions raised, any decisions made, and any actions assigned. We'll later use these notes as the basis for sending the meeting minutes. It can sometimes be a good idea to project on screen the document you are using to collect the notes. This way you create consensus around the minutes and nothing gets missed. But as a word of warning, if you're not able to do this, then use a pen and paper to collect the notes rather than a laptop or something similar. Because if people see you using these electronic devices, they can basically think you're not paying attention or that you're being rude during the meeting. Now, if the meeting has a particularly large number of attendees, then you may want to consider asking a colleague to collect the notes on your behalf, because it can be difficult to concentrate on what's being said, keeping the meeting on track, and at the same time, taking notes while all that is happening. And then finally, now that you've just finished a fantastic and hopefully really productive meeting, there's just one step remaining, and that is to follow up after the meeting. So we each interpret the world in different ways. So it can be quite common for different people present in the meeting to come away from the meeting with a slightly different understanding of what was agreed. So we don't want that. So to avoid this, tidy up the minutes you took during the meeting and distribute them to all attendees and any other interested parties promptly after the meeting has finished. The most important part of the minutes is this acronym WWDWBW, and that simply means who will do what by when. Now, I've created this really simple meeting agenda template that you're welcome to copy and use for your own meetings, but the only real bits to pay attention to are at the top. We simply say where and when the meeting is going to take place. The meeting purpose, which is about starting with the end in mind. And then all you need is to list the agenda, which is what's the topic, how long you're going to spend discussing it, and who's the leader for that topic. So that's it. In summary, without effective meeting guidelines, meetings can very easily descend into a waste of time if you're not careful. Now, it's hard to imagine that a single person exists in the world in a professional capacity who hasn't experienced a pointless meeting. A great meeting begins before the meeting, when the purpose of the meeting and the agenda are developed. During the meeting, care needs to be taken to keep the meeting on track and to keep the meeting productive. Finally, after the meeting, it's important to distribute the minutes, including WWD, WBW, who will do what by when. I hope you've all remembered that. If you follow these effective meeting guidelines, then you should be able to increase significantly the quality of your next meeting. That's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thank you.